There isn't just one action that can stop COVID in its tracks, but taking personal measures and building healthy habits will help to protect us all. COVID-19 spreads in confined spaces, crowded places and close contact settings. Wash your hands regularly and practice good hand hygiene. Carry a face covering at all times and wear it in any crowded or busy places. Increase your distance when you can and seek out fresh air either by meeting outdoors or increasing ventilation indoors. These little personal steps will really help add up and protect not only you, but those around you. Lateral flow device kits are available free of charge to everyone in the Isle of Man. You can order them online at gov.im/COVID-19 or collect them from any participating pharmacy. It is recommended that everyone test every 3 to 4 days. In the last few weeks, almost 70% of positive PCR tests were identified thanks to an initial LFD test, making them a really important tool to uncover hidden cases of the virus. Vaccinations are effective in preventing severe illness, hospitalisation and even death. The vaccination programme is available to all island residents aged 16 and over and provides our greatest collective defence and ability to manage COVID-19 long term. It takes just 1 minute to register for the COVID-19 vaccination and it could save you from severe infection. Be safe, be smart, be kind for our island.
Hello and welcome to Election 2021 Question Time. In this edition, we feature the candidates looking to represent the constituency of Ramsey. Joining me on the panel this evening are, in alphabetical order, Alex Allinson, Robert Cowell, Laurie Hooper, Jonathan Kinraid, Simon Mann, Luke Parker, and Leonard Singer. Erica Spencer is also standing, but has had to attend to an urgent family matter in the UK at short notice. Following the general election on September the 23rd, 2 of them will be elected to the House of Keys. But before we start with questions, we're giving each candidate up to 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And first up, we have Alex Allinson. Alex.
Thank you. My name's Dr. Alex Allinson, and being elected to be the MHK to represent Ramsey in 2016 was probably one of the proudest moments in my life. It was a real challenge moving from local politics to national politics, getting involved in government, trying to do the best thing not only for Ramsey and the community that put me there, but also for our nation. The last 18 months has been brutal. We've seen the effect it's had on our country. We've seen the effect it's had around the world. But in Ramsey, we've also seen the way that the communities clubbed together become stronger. One of the other things we've seen over the last 18 months is a spotlight on the inequalities we have in our society, whether that be poverty, whether that be unemployment, whether that be poor housing or not access to housing at all. I think the next 5 years with the new administration is absolutely essential. We need to make the right decisions. Yes, we have got a financial crisis in terms of the amount of money spent supporting the local economy and supporting people in jobs. But now is not the time for austerity. Now is the time for investment in infrastructure. Now is the time to reset intergenerational fairness, invest in health and social care, invest in education, and build back in our communities, make it even stronger. I believe the next 5 years will have challenges, but also will have major opportunities for our nation. And that's why I want to stand again to be MHK, to be part of that move, to be part of government, to make the right decisions for our country and the right decisions for our people, both in Ramsey, but also nationally, because we are interconnected. And what happens in the north also has repercussions right the way across our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Robert Cowell.
Thank you very much. My name is Robert Cowell, and I'd like to stand for the House of Keys to represent the constituency of Ramsey. I stood a few months ago to represent the town through the town hall of the Ramsey Commissioners. As Dr. Allinson said, there's a lot of issues that face the Isle of Man currently. The one I'd like to address most is rate reform and try and make the island a fairer place for everyone to live. One of the biggest issues I think is important to the island right now is to retain youth talent. Far too many of our younger people leave the Isle of Man for the brighter lights of city life or even just the UK, and they never come back. To do that, we need to increase our economy, we need to increase jobs, we need to broaden the industry on the Isle of Man, which would then lead to me as an MHK trying to win new business for the Isle of Man and sell the Isle of Man as hard as we can, because as we all know, it's a fabulous place to live. The economy, post-COVID-19, we need to recover back to where we were. People talk about the economic recovery. As Dr. Allinson's already said, I think it's not about the recovery. We need to be aiming higher than that, and to go back to where we were would be fantastic. But there are opportunities out there for us to go even further than we were before and mark our stance on the globe. Ramsey would be at the heart of everything that I would do, with trying to bring new jobs into Ramsey to help our microeconomy. As again, Dr. Allinson said, we are part of a wider network, and I would look forward to working with the entire Isle of Man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Laurie Hooper.
Thanks very much, Richard. It's been a privilege to serve and represent Ramsey over the last 5 years, and despite the challenging political environment we've faced, I think I've managed to achieve some remarkable successes in that time. Whether it's been introducing the living wage to the island, launching an entirely new economic sector, introducing financial support like MIRA during the pandemic, bringing forward new legislation to help support constituents, or simply standing up for fairness and transparency and ensuring that Ramsey has a strong voice in Tynwald, I know that I've managed to make a positive difference. Now, this short introduction isn't long enough to tell you everything, so I'll try and keep it very brief. The next 5 years will be challenging. COVID has shown us that the island is facing a lot of complex and interlinked problems, and so we need leaders and representatives who are able to see these and tackle them. to understand that solutions to one issue can also positively impact on others, and make sure that decisions are made on a cross-government policy basis, always putting people first. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make good-sounding but meaningless statements about cutting waste or growing the economy, because quite frankly, you deserve better than that. We need representatives that will knuckle down and get to grips with the challenges that we face, instead of just making big promises that sound good, but ultimately come with little substance. Significant change doesn't happen overnight. Meaningful change often comes slowly, so we need representatives who are persistent, dogged, and determined. Thank you very much to everybody who's taken the time to talk to me so far on the doorstep. I've taken a lot away from these conversations, and whilst I couldn't fit everything into my manifesto, I have been taking notes, and I have a lot of things to get back to work on. Now, I know politicians do like to make promises, so here's mine. I'll work hard, I'll do my best, and I will always put Ramsey first. I'm here to work for you. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Laurie Hooper, your Liberal Vanning candidate for Ramsey.
Thank you, Laurie. Jonathan Kinraid.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Jonathan Kinraid. I'm 45 now, and over the last 25 years, I've had a varied work experience, pretty much 50-50 split within my own business, running my own businesses, which has shown me some of the challenges that people face doing that, and working for significant local companies and big companies in primarily IT, in finance and the gaming area. I think those skills combined and those experiences combined have exposed me to a broad section of society and given me a real insight into both sides of the card, being self-employed and working for a business. I'm a very proud Manxman, and I really want to, if elected, be able to try and help see the island and the people of the island thrive and flourish. I love Ramsey, and it has been mentioned that I don't currently live in Ramsey. This is a disappointment to me. We had expected to be living there long before now, but unfortunately the house move is taking a long time. I really want to be part, and would love to be part, of a calibration between government, the Ramsey commissioners, the residents of Ramsey, the businesses of Ramsey, in really working to drive Ramsey forward. Key issues for me would be Ramsey and everything about the town, the quayside, the flood defences and healthcare. And nationally, I would focus strongly on, similar to Rob, really, housing, the skills shortage, the birth rate, and our young people leaving. Too many of our young people are leaving for the UK and not coming back. If we can fix some of those issues, or at least partway fix some of those issues, it becomes almost a virtuous circle. And you fix some of those issues, you keep more people here, it's more sustainable for more businesses to open up, and so it all goes round about. I think I would bring some out-of-the-box thinking, new ideas, new solutions. I'm not scared of challenging conversations and appropriate conversations, even if it rattles a few cages and causes discomfort for people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Simon Mann.
Yes, good evening. I'm Simon Mann. I'm a lawyer qualified in 2 jurisdictions. And I'm standing firstly to grasp the 2 thorny issues that affect Ramsey. I am firmly against the marina proposal on a number of grounds, and I wish to see that the problems over the GPs and the Ramsey Group practice are brought to an end by the creation of a new modern medical centre and the redevelopment of the Ramsey Cottage Hospital site. Nationally, we've heard a lot of talk about affordable housing, and I have a major proposal for this island, that we create a Department of Housing. We have a housing minister created who reports regularly to Tynwald, and behind that department sits a housing trust that takes hold of all the and administers all the public sector houses, raises the necessary finance for building more public sector houses without necessarily the constraints of Tynwald. And more importantly, it oversees and administers and creates affordable housing for our young people. And by affordable housing, I mean houses that aren't just produced apparently cheaply by developers, but are produced at cost, made of materials that a couple of years down the line don't need to be repainted. Affordable needs to be affordable at the point of purchase, and affordable for a young family many years down the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Luke Parker.
Thank you. I'm Luke Parker. I've been raised in Ramsey all my life for 33 years. I have 2 wonderful daughters, and I've been very heavily involved in the town and also in many events within the town, from motorcycle shows, kayak events to car shows as well. I've been heavily engaged within the youth work within the town as well, also volunteering in the youth industry and what that entails within Ramsey, as well as broader throughout the island. I've also got a local business I jointly run within Ramsey as part of a family, which is one big reason I'd like to see within the infrastructure and the development of the island is business development, and also support that government can offer to local businesses, businesses that are already here, as well as attracting businesses as well from further afield. Within Ramsey, I've been part of the Ramsey Town Commissioners for over 5 years, and during that time, I believe I've given more aspects to create different approaches that people can come, attracted more people to politics through the platforms of social media as well, giving that more younger appeal. During the time within the commissioners, it's been a wide opening, having developed contacts within government locally and again further afield. And I believe with your support and your vote that not only can I develop and support Ramsey further, but I can get going on with the ground running beneath me as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke. And finally, Leonard Singer.
Thank you. My name's Leonard Singer. I've lived in Ramsey for 31 years. I'm a retired pharmacist and I own the pharmacy in St Paul's Square. I served as Ramsey MHK for 12 years and I was also a member of Ramsey Commissioners for 8 years and I'm a current commissioner. All this means that I have a wide knowledge and experience of Manx politics, how it works and how it doesn't work. So why am I standing? I believe there's a lot to do in Ramsey, including a need for infrastructure improvements, particularly the roads and the pavements. We need government incentives to attract businesses to Ramsey and out of Douglas, bringing good and full and part-time jobs. And as has been mentioned, a constant complaint to me is the poor accessibility to the GP surgery, so that has to be talked about. Protecting the future of Ramsey is paramount, and what do I mean by that? I totally oppose the marina development on South Beach. We would lose an important, unique nature reserve, a beautiful beach which has been enjoyed for recreation for many years, and the town subjected to years of disturbance and upset. And if I am elected, I will take the opportunity to take a motion to Tynwald to protect South Beach. Island-wide, there's an urgent need to solve the housing crisis, timely intervention for those suffering from mental health illness. But the most important thing is that without a strong economy and being able to increase tax receipts, there'll be no money for health services and infrastructure development.
Thank you, Leonard. Okay, kicking off with the questions. Leonard, I think you've been checking out my notes because the first question is related to what each of the candidates' big idea is to grow the economy, but more importantly, to grow the tax revenues to government to pay for all the wish lists on all the candidates' campaign literature and manifestos. So, Leonard Singer, would you like to address that first, please?
Yeah, well, there's no doubt in my mind that the economy has been declining on this island. And that's not just before, that was before COVID. And of course, COVID has made it even more difficult. And I believe that the problem has been that there has not been the right people in the right places to bring business to this island. And people have come to this island, investors who are willing to put money into the island, and they've just found that the people who are in charge are risk averse. And they've actually thrown their hands up in the air and said, I can't deal with this, because they've had an obstruction put into place. If they go to the FSA, when they walk through the door of the FSA, they're treated immediately as being a criminal, and they've got to prove they're not a criminal. So they've thrown their hands up in the air and said, I can't deal with this. And they've gone to places like Guernsey or Wales, because Guernsey has a a chief minister who is so pro-business that they give somebody to that person to look after them, to find them accommodation.
You're blaming the politicians or the civil servants for the... you're blaming the politicians or the civil
no,
servants?
No, because the answer is that we need to have in place in Department of Enterprise, etc., for people who have had real business experience and can give confidence to the people who are coming here to say, this is the way we do it, we're here to help you. And
with the agency model, that's exactly what they've done.
No, we haven't done that, because, I mean, you just look what happened with the fund. They had a £50 million fund to support new businesses. They gave it to somebody in Liverpool to look at the applications, and what happened is they didn't spend any money. They spent about £3 million out of it, which went to the people. So what I'm trying to say is that we really need a positive attitude. We have to increase our tax receipts. As I said before, if we don't increase our tax receipts, then there's no money for anything.
Okay, thanks. So it sounds like more encouragement from within government and maybe a lighter touch regulation. Laurie Hooper, you've been a member of DFE. How do you address that, and what's your solution to...
Well, to start off with, you ignore all those kind of comments, actually, because talking about bringing private sector experience inside the Department for Enterprise, actually promotion policy is all now led by public-private partnerships. So the 4 agencies inside DFE are actually run by private sector individuals. The only public sector representative, I think, on all those boards are the politicians. So I think I'm the only public sector representative on the business agency board, for example. The rest are all people that are quite experienced entrepreneurs and business owners in their own right. So I think solving that problem has already started. I don't think it's politicians' job to come up with all the next big ideas. I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't run a business. It's not my place to say, actually, that's a winner and that's a loser. Quite frankly, we need to make sure that, that the people that do have those ideas are able to come to the Isle of Man and are supported in the right way. And I think the way we do that is through some of our financial assistance schemes, through things like the fund Leonard mentioned. That fund was an absolute disaster from my perspective. It was completely targeted at the wrong areas. But ultimately, it's about building that confidence, I think, in that relationship to encourage some inward investment. And we've seen some of the successes in the recent years. We've now got a blockchain office on the Isle of Man, actually building that kind of burgeoning blockchain and digital sector. We've started to develop an esports sector on the Isle of Man, and in the last 6 months I've helped bring through regulations to kickstart medicinal cannabis production and export on the Isle of Man. That's 3 new sectors I can name off the top of my head that will produce hundreds of jobs in the next few years, quite a lot of them in the north of the island, actually. So we're looking at a situation now where a lot of these medicinal cannabis applications, I think there are 10 or 11 applications in already, are looking at places like Derby and Andreas to start developing their farms and factories. So if we're bringing more jobs to the north of the island, more jobs to the areas around Ramsey, they'll inevitably benefit Ramsey, I think. So really, I don't really think it's up to politicians to come in with the next big idea. It's up to us to make sure the systems and procedures and support is right to help those people that have the right ideas come forward and sell them to us.
Okay, thanks. Robert Cowell, you've mentioned growing the economy and jobs in your introduction. What ideas do you have to grow the economy, grow jobs, grow tax revenue?
Thank you very much. I think it's a bit rude or a bit harsh to discredit Mr. Singer's point. I've heard stories with the FSA where people have tried to come to the Isle of Man and they've been blocked for whatever reason and they have just gone somewhere else. I've had, first-hand experience of stories along those lines.
They may have been blocked for very good reasons.
They may have well been good reasons. They may have been just being a bit hard.
The Isle of Man has had a reputation.
It has got
say in the past,
and we are trying to clean that reputation.
Yes,
so
exactly.
now it's squeaky clean. But I think we may have gone a little bit too squeaky clean. Anyway, so when it comes down to increasing the tax rate, it's got to be more jobs, hasn't it? More jobs, more people employed, more money in the economy, more tax being paid, more national insurance being paid, and there is no loser in that situation. Mr. Hooper raises a very good point, 3 new sectors straight away off the bat, and that's exactly what the government needs to be doing. Politicians may not well be involved in business, but from my experience, politics and business are very, very closely linked, and that the politicians should be encouraging business and helping business wherever it can, and it does do. Hold my hands up, I've had help from the government in the last 12 months, and I will be forever grateful for the Isle of Man government, helping my business. The Isle of Man government had a tagline of freedom to flourish, and I think that's probably fair to say is pretty true of most of us. But I do want to restore the Isle of Man where you can mentality. I think that's quite important, that we need to be dynamic and we can do things and we will move forward and we will increase our tax rate and everyone will live happy ever after.
Thank you. Jonathan Kinraid, you've been involved in business many years.
Yeah,
What's
I
your
have,
view?
and I've experienced a bit of both sides to this, where I've worked on a lot of projects over the years where people have been trying to relocate to the island, and they've gone to significant expense with lawyers and architects and all those sort of things, and myself getting involved as well, and got to a point where either they've given up and gone to Guernsey or Jersey or somewhere else. The flip side to that, and it comes back to some of what I was saying in my little introduction before, is we need more facilities on the island to attract these people. It's not just about the business. Sometimes these people relocate to the island, and my experience again is that there's not enough for them to do here. So having made the jump to come here, especially the partners who are maybe at home not working and like to socialise, are used to London and Manchester and these places, the Isle of Man currently doesn't match up. We don't have the scope of entertainment and facilities and things, and that, like I said, those businesses become more viable as you bring more people here. There are definitely sectors that we can tap into. Esports is a brilliant one that I've been quite involved in as well, especially on the sim racing side. That is going to explode over the next few years, and we are ideally placed as an island to really capitalise on that. The other one I'd like to see us look at is environmental, and we have to accept the Isle of Man is not a huge population. We can make our own changes over here. We won't have a huge impact on the world. What we could do is set up as a centre of excellence for companies that are trying to get into that environmental space and trying to develop new environmental ideas and products. Why not encourage them to be not based here, because it doesn't work with manufacturing and things, but have a presence here, have some of their IP here, and use us as a test bed. If they've got a new building or a technique, let us try it out. Let us benefit from the PR as well as them.
Okay, thank you. Alex Allinson?
Yeah, I mean, what I think a lot of people have been talking about here is facilitating and enabling businesses to set up. I think one of the attributes of the Isle of Man is a strong regulatory culture. So the FSA, a lot of the regulation here is world class, and that actually attracts people and means that we're working in an ethical and honest way. But what the criticisms have always been is that government departments and government agencies aren't working together. The people have to go to banks and having problems getting bank accounts, people having problems with planning or getting problems with licenses. One of the things we've seen over the last 18 months through COVID is government departments working together, all the people who need to make decisions around the table at once. And if we're going to encourage businesses, we need to keep that ethos going forward so we can attract the best people to relocate here, but also grow the active working population.
Thank you. You say working together, but they've all been working together to stop COVID, stop the threat.
But it's banking.
Could they do that in another context?
Exactly, it's banking that cooperative working. Again, when somebody comes over with millions of pounds to invest in the Isle of Man, they should not have to go from room to room, building to building to talk to those people. All those people should come together for them, and that's the way we can drive things forward.
Thank you. Luke Parker?
Yeah, me and take Dr. Allison's point. And while I don't have the experience of working within government on that scale and working with those parties, I have got experience within the retail sector. And I also challenge what Mr. Singer said, where he said economy is on the decline. I would say within the retail aspect, which is one sector, within certain areas, it's actually on the rise. Especially one area that I'm very knowledgeable, outdoors and cycling in particular, has been the biggest it's ever seen, especially on the Isle of Man, in many, many years. Probably the biggest it's ever been on a year. So it's a massive asset for the island. It's something that the government can continue to support with, the outdoors, and continue with that and see if we can attract and develop business within those sectors. We live on a beautiful island, so why not do so? And again, supporting the smaller businesses. They're our foundation. The big businesses are great, and to attract and, like I said, to increase tax and, again, increases job revenue. But again, it can be very flimsy, putting all our eggs in one basket. Having the small retailers or the retail variety is what attracts people. While working in an office and working in those environments are great, we still need the smaller shops, the independents, and those type of bricks and mortar stores to attract those people to come here and work here in the first place.
Thank you. I always enjoy good shopping in Ramsey as well, by the way. Before I get back to you, Leonard, I just want to get Simon Mann's view, please.
Yes, well, of course, before we look at what we need to do going forward, we actually need to look back and see where it all started and where it all went wrong. We had a marvellous financial industry on this island. 10 years ago, when I would sit in my office in Finch Road at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd look out across the opposite side of Finch Road, and every office would be lit up with people who were in early working. They would work the full days, and the offices were fully occupied with people. And in that last 10 years, if you walked down Finch Road at 8 o'clock in the morning now, every office is in darkness. Most of them are empty. And that's just one part of the business centre of Douglas.
Maybe they're all working at home, though.
No,
nowadays.
it had nothing to do with working at home. It's all simply down to the fact that this island wrecked its own finance industry. Part of the history of it is, if you go back and look at the general pressure that the Americans put on tax havens, this island let a lot of people in to scrutinise our finance industry, and they fell over backwards, and at the same time lost an awful lot of the key elements of the business at the time.
But looking ahead,
Looking ahead,
what would you propose?
Looking ahead, we've got to go out there on the international scene. It's no good sitting as an insular government and saying, "Oh well, we can expand this and we can expand that." Yes. At the same time as we had our finance industry, we let all our core industries basically decline. And yes, they all need to be regenerated and brought back into full production. But if we want to have some kind of core finance industry that's going to be paying this island for the future, there are new, exciting businesses out there on the global scene. But I hate to say it, there's still many places that have never even heard of the Isle of Man, and that's because we're still sitting in our own little island and we're not getting sufficiently out there. I appreciate there have been some initiatives and so on. If we take the space business as an example, a lot of people laughed when they first heard that some of the companies on the island were getting involved in the space business. But look at how that is now expanding, and how we could have gone into that even further. This island could have been much more of a centre, and we're missing the trick. If you see what some of the other tax havens, or we'll call them tax efficient areas of the world, are doing now.
We're not a tax haven, apparently.
We're now sitting far behind them all. They're taking the business and they're stepping in where we've been too slow.
Okay, thanks. So, more aggressive marketing promotion. Leonard, just one final point before I move on to another subject.
On the banks, Alex mentioned the banks. Companies come here, they can't open a bank account, and they go off to Eastern Europe, in fact. So I think that the problem is here that we don't have as I've said, the right people in the right positions with proven business experience in the critical economic development section. I think that's what we need.
Thank you. You made that point earlier. So we're going to move on to another subject now, and we have a question from Claire, who's in the audience, regarding the marina proposal.
Would you support public funding for a marina in Ramsey Bay after the election, and what evidence is there in the current economic climate that such expenditure would be worthwhile and beneficial when we face so many challenges? So that was, would you support public funding for a marina in Ramsey Bay after the election, and what evidence is there in the current economic climate that such expenditure would be worthwhile and beneficial when we face so many challenges? Sorry, I couldn't read it.
Thank you, Claire. So, inevitable, really, we have a question about the marina, but in particular, would you support public funding? I guess there's what comes out of this as well is, do you actually support a marina proposal? Luke Parker, could you address that, please?
Certainly can. As its current stance, and when you say Ramsey Bay, I assume you mean South Bay. Would I be correct? Then no, I would not be in favour. South Bay, as it stands, is one of Ramsey's only nice, usable sandy beaches. I mean, we have got the North Bay, but it's not as, what I would say, stone-free compared to the south. I love the tranquility the island offers, and what South Bay offers. I mean, already, again, we've had 2 consistent years of superb weather, and we haven't seen more people on that beach than ever before. And now with more additions like the raft being put into Ramsey Bay, again, it's just more attractions, and it'll be great to see more amenities added to that. As for the marina itself, as I've already said, I wouldn't be in favour, especially spending public money on it. I don't, until there was a way that a marina could be built, but I wouldn't be like it on South Bay. I don't see the feasibility of it. I just see it as a derelict boat park in its current stance. But no, I would not be in favour.
Thank you. Simon Mann.
Yes, well, of course, I'm looking for the support of the people in Ramsey to deliver a very firm message on election night that Ramsey, as a town, says a firm no to this proposal and brings it to a final end. This has been hanging over the town for a long period of time. It's a crazy scheme. It's going nowhere. It's going to wreck the ecology in the bay, amongst other things. Legally, that beach belongs to the public, and I'll stand with anybody and say that the government actually can't sell it. They can't lease it. It'll be a long legal battle if they try to. And so, in answer to your question, I'll say very firmly, there's no question of a penny of government money going towards that particular scheme. At some stage, somebody will come up with a more sensible, viable scheme within the inner harbour, and then we can all look closely at that and see if it's something reasonably sensible to support. But as things stand at the moment, all the people within that development area are suffering the equivalent of planning blight, while this crazy scheme has been allowed to rumble on through the community. Those people living in that scheme are suffering. And on election night, I'm calling upon everybody to finally bring this to a close. I'm looking for a sufficiently heavy mandate that I can turn around when that count is over and declare to those developers the matter is at an end. Ramsey says no.
Thank you. Alex Allinson.
Yeah, I mean, in answer to the question, no, I completely oppose any government funding to a marina scheme in Ramsey Bay. I've always been keen on a marina scheme in the harbour, and as a commissioner tried to progress that, and there were various plans made. 3 years ago, when people started talking about a marina in the bay just as a concept, I had an open mind about it, but that was 3 years ago. And what we've seen since then is a huge amount of concern and anxiety from people living in South Ramsey, but all over Ramsey. Nothing has actually been done about those proposals. The people behind it have not had any agreement with DOI to advance it. They've been told there'll be no government funding. They haven't got a lease. And let's be quite clear about this. Any application for planning would have to go through a full transparent planning process, would have to have environmental impact surveys. Now, I've talked to DEFRA, and they sent me a 3-page list of the various objections they'd have just in terms of planning for it. I've also talked to the DOI, and any lease for that would have to go through Tynwald. So there will be no done deals. But I've also met with the people behind the petition for Save the Bay and taken on board their concerns, and met with the people behind the original plans and asked them once and for all to make their intentions clear. Because as we've heard, there is an awful lot of uncertainty about Ramsey. I personally don't think this project is going anywhere because it hasn't got the financial backing behind it. But the people who are proposing it need to be honest with the people of Ramsey about their intentions for the future and need to do that now.
Thank you. Laurie Hooper.
So thanks, Claire, for asking the inevitable question. I don't support public funding for a marina in the bay. I don't support any development of our nature reserve. But actually, it doesn't matter what any candidate on this stage really says, because the bay has quite a lot of legal protections baked into it, actually. So we have something called the Manx Marine Nature Reserve Order, which actually quite clearly specifies you can't build in the bay without explicit government permission, which they need to get from DEFRA, which, as Alex has already said, they ain't going to get. There's not a chance of that happening. There's also a planning policy inside the strategic plan. It's Environmental Policy 4, which states quite clearly development will not be permitted, which would adversely affect our marine nature reserves. So if they were to put a planning application in, it's not going anywhere. Planning policy is explicit about how much we value that nature reserve. It's also a key component of our island's biosphere status. And as I think I'm the only candidate on this stage to have signed the Biosphere Pledge, it would be pretty ridiculous of me to try supporting something that's going to damage that. So ultimately, there's a lot of concern about this at the moment in Ramsey. I know that from talking to people on the doorsteps, but I'm trying to reassure people that this is not something they have to worry about. The legal protections exist, the planning protections exist. as Alex has said, there would have to be a Tynwald vote. There's no money behind this as far as anyone can work out. Quite frankly, it's an issue that is becoming an issue because we have an election, because people are making it an issue. But the reality is, this proposal is dead in the water, if you'll pardon the pun. And quite frankly, it's not an issue I think we should be concerned about. I'd much rather be talking about affordable housing and economic growth and the healthcare service and actual issues that we know we're going to face, rather than overly worrying about something which, as far as I can already work out from my conversations with various government departments, hasn't made any progress in 2 years and is highly unlikely to see any in the near future.
Thank you. I'll come back to Simon, but Robert Cowell, your
thank
view.
you. Claire, thanks for your question. Thanks for coming as well. I think to realise a project of that size, you're north of £100 million, right? And when you sort of, people brand these figures around, £100 million is a huge amount of money. In answer to your question, do I support public funding? No. Did I support private funding? No. You couldn't have it, even if they had it for free. It's one of those things where it's just so divisive, and for many, many reasons listed by my colleagues here, it won't happen. I do not want to get involved in a debate where the marina becomes the centre of our election campaign. Not interested, because there's so many issues in the Isle of Man and in Ramsey that are far more important than a white elephant project.
Thank you. Leonard Singer.
Well, of course, I mean, I was the first person to stand up to say no to the bay. Because I did that because neither of our members had actually come out and said, I categorically do not support this. It is a fantasy project, and as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter if, in regard to funding, because I'm saying no. There shouldn't be government funding. If you've got government funding, you've got money to put into this private project, then you can spend that money much better on health and infrastructure and helping people who are going to the food banks. But what I want to say is that when you look at the reports on the videos, on the letters, we've got Alex Allinson, who, after that meeting, said, I really hope it gets built. That is quote. And he also wrote to someone who challenged him and said that basically that he supports the principle, but obviously with various, let me tell you, he says, while supportive in principle of the proposals, I will ensure that if they are to progress, this is through a full and democratic process.
Just heard from Dr. Alex.
If I can come back to that, because that was the letter I wrote to Mr. Court, and that was 3 years. That was 3 years ago. You know, when this was first started, we've had some major changes in the last 3 years. First of them is Ramsey Bay becoming a marine nature reserve. Secondly, we've had the climate change, the climate crisis being announced, and the whole idea of blue carbon has become an intrinsic part of how we offset our carbon emissions on here. And also, we've had 3 years where these ideas have not been progressed at all. And I think that has let down the people of Ramsey in terms of, we're now talking about this uncertainty. At the time, absolutely, as I said, I will support anyone who wants to invest in Ramsey, in the infrastructure of Ramsey, to create wealth and prosperity and jobs here. But that was 3 years ago, and nothing has happened since, except that we now know the value of that beach because people have been using it so much during the lockdowns, and actually the commissioners have been investing in the beach in terms of the platform there, and I'd like to see more investment so we can enhance the use of it.
Thank you. Sorry, Leonard, I just want to get Jonathan Kinraid in, and I'll give you a response at the end.
Yeah, last to go. There's not a lot else to say, I don't think. I am in the process, and my partner and I are in the process of buying a house on Mona Street. We are well and truly in the middle of that. Usain Bolt could get to the beach in about 4.5 seconds from our house, so we're well and truly there. As others have explained, it's not going to happen. There is no way on earth that scheme in its existing format, if it were to be brought forward and if it were to be proposed and go for planning and all these things, it really isn't going to happen. Personally, I would be against any building on the beach, but like I say, I can't see it ever going to happen anyway. I think we need to be a bit careful about focusing so much on one issue that people are actually deciding who they will or won't vote on based on one issue which I don't think is going to become an issue long term. If it did, I would stand up against it, but I genuinely can't see it. I think we need to be careful of phrases like Ramsey says no. Ramsey said no to a marina.
I'm not afraid of Ramsey says
Ramsey
no,
said no
because
to
no means no.
Well, Ramsey said no to a marina years ago.
Well, how's it been left without the two sitting members?
If I could finish what I was saying.
So long without
Simon,
leaving the
thank you.
people
Just
suffering.
give Jonathan right to
Yeah,
finish.
if I could finish. Ramsey does need investment, and it does need the harbour side, the quay side, flood defences, all those things need looking at. It doesn't need to be a massive grandiose scheme. It needs to be something relevant and complementary to what we've already got, and investigated properly. That could well benefit Ramsey and benefit all of us. And the danger is, if we bandy round phrases like Ramsey says no, you won't find people wanting to take private investment to the town. They'll be scared off, and they'll think, Ramsey always says no, let's go to Peel, let's go to Port St Mary, let's go to Douglas.
Thank you. Just final word on this, Leonard Singer.
In answer to Alex, people have always used that beach. It's not just in the last 2 years. People have always used that as a public beach for generations. And I'm afraid that nobody, neither of the members, have had 2 years. They've had 2 years to stand up and say no.
There's quite a good reason for that, actually, Leonard. So when there's nothing on the table, there's nothing to say no to. So I haven't said no to building a nuclear power plant on Queen's Pier because it's not. It has been on
the table because.
No, Leonard, it hasn't. This is my point. So they did a public presentation. Was it 2-3 years ago up at Mountain View? Since then, it's gone. This only became an issue when a certain election candidate stood up and publicly said, I don't want this. It's a truth in politics that you never believe anything until it's been denied. Well, it's very easy to stand up and say, I don't want this to happen. But actually, it was never going to happen. The reason you haven't heard anyone say anything about it in the last 2 years is because it has not been happening. Well, I guarantee you.
People who've suffered in the meantime, within that area, property prices have been reduced. Some of them are elderly people. It's been a nightmare to them.
There's any evidence to support that.
I would say there's a substantial amount of evidence.
There are a lot of people
the people living in King's and Queen's Court. Those people there are going to be immediately affected along the promenade. They have suffered for far too long over
There are a lot of people that are worried about this.
And to dismiss it as something that Ramsey won't say no to, Ramsey's going to be very clear in what it's saying no to. It's not saying no to investment in the town. It's saying no to that particular crazy scheme. And it should have been said no to a long time ago. Well, I'm going to deliver that message.
Well, I've come across people who are supportive of it, even people living on Queen's Promenade who are supportive of it. So when you say Ramsey says no, it's people hopefully will vote, give myself a vote, because I stand against it. Other people will not vote for me because they support it. But I mean, when you say nothing's happened, Mr. Bromley Martin has sent round letters about relaunches.
I have seen them, Leonard.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm saying, so don't say nothing. Don't say nothing's happened.
Yeah.
Because he talks about Tynwald 99%.
He talks about all sorts of things, Leonard. But as you've already heard from Alex,
so you're saying he's a con man.
As you've heard,
do not use that word on a television camera.
Right,
what he's saying.
No, I'm saying, is he saying that?
As you've heard from Alex and myself, both of us have talked to all the government departments involved in this, and I can assure you that the information we've got, that I've actually published in my manifesto for people to read freely, is that this has not progressed. None of the conditions that were set aside by government have been met. It is, in my view, highly unlikely any of those conditions could ever be met, and whatever the promoters may or may not be saying is entirely a matter for them.
What has to be done, this has to be killed at this election. Dead, finished.
Thank you, everyone. I think from my perspective, it sounds like everyone's in agreement that they don't actually want it, and we're having a very long dialogue about
I would like a marina.
why they don't want it.
I'd love a marina.
I'd like to.
It's not there.
I mean,
not there.
Mr. Singer, you, I think, in one of your announcements said that you were opposed to any marina. Is that right?
No. In fact,
just to clarify.
I fully support the feasibility study in the Inner Harbour, because that would be real regeneration for Ramsey.
It's proven regenerating areas.
Yep. Okay.
Right, okay, thank you, and thank you, Claire, for that question. Okay, I want to focus on another issue which has been at the forefront of sort of many candidates' minds. It's a very pressing issue at the moment. That's access to affordable housing. And as you're all aware, I'm sure local first-time buyers are getting increasingly frustrated and finding it increasingly difficult to get that first foothold on the property ladder. At the same time, the Isle of Man government actively markets the fact to off-island investors that there are no restrictions on buying property in the Isle of Man, and there's obviously no stamp duty payable either. What actions would you propose to help local first-time buyers? Jonathan Kinraid.
Simply, and I'm a long way away from being a first-time buyer these days, but we have just gone through the process of buying a house, and it was an absolute nightmare. Houses come on the market, and literally the next day you'd phone the estate agent, they were gone. Cash buyer, not interested in anyone with a mortgage, any of those things. We're running a bit short on time, so basically I would like to look at the whole situation. It's one of the key things in my manifesto. My initial proposal for discussion and debate would be something along the lines of a restriction when a property first hits the market. For the first 3 months, for example, it's available only to people who would be buying that property as their primary residence on the Isle of Man. If after 3 months it's still not sold, then it's fair game and opens up to everybody. There are lots of other ways you could get similar sort of results, but something along those lines I think is worth investigation.
Thank you. Luke Parker?
Yeah, follow on from, there's quite a nice scheme for a 3-month sort of base of a plan. Another way is for extra funding or support from government to allow especially younger people to be able to jointly buy with government the houses, or what I would love to see is a savings scheme, potentially where younger generation or their families can put money in and the government can potentially match that to create, even if wasn't the whole purchase of the house, a deposit where banks or other funding is available then to purchase the house, which will be really good for younger people to get on the stepping stone for purchasing the houses. But also when you say affordable housing, it could also generate not just affordable first-time buyers housing, to actually buy a house that isn't on the first-time buying scheme, where it could actually be a family of 4, but they're trying to buy their first house. Most first-time buyers' houses are generally a 2 or 3 bed, but they need bigger, where those type of schemes can actually support beyond from first-time buyers as well.
Leonard Singer?
Yeah. I agree. It's very difficult. I mean, when you have Dandara, the building estates, they've got to put a certain number of what they term first-time buyers' housing in there. But there's the cost of these houses is still out of the reach of these people. What I would like to see is government using maybe brownfield sites and specifying that these are for first-time buyers' housing. The government to specify the quality of the house, the price of the house, and to be absolutely sure that the people going in are first-time buyers, that they're not bought by speculators, 2, 3, 4 houses, and then rented them off. Because the present first-time buyers government scheme has not worked. It's just not worked. But I only read in the paper yesterday, you might know about it, that there's a new scheme coming forward. I hope, I've not seen the details, I hope this is a better scheme to get people onto the housing ladder. But I certainly think that, and for people who, a lot of people will never be able to afford housing, we need something like housing associations, good housing associations, who can build good quality at reasonable rent, and these then help house people who can't afford it to buy a house, and those could also be on these brownfield sites, and I think that would be a help.
Thank you. Robert Cowell.
Thank you very much, yeah. I might be wrong, but this isn't a new problem. We've been here before in the 70s and probably in the 80s as well, and now it's our generation's turn. You know, our generation, or the younger generation, have been through a lot of major issues in the world that other generations perhaps haven't. I think that to get it going, I'd like to see the Isle of Man government support young people. We have to entice our young people. I know of many people who have had a house deposit, or they're trying to save a house deposit, and in the end, they can't do it, and they go and buy a house in the UK for £80,000 or £100,000, and we lose them. I like Luke's idea of some form of savings account with the government that parents could put money into, like a fixed bond or something like that. But yeah, for me, it would be if the government could help in some way in selling land to people, they can build their own houses, boost the building market. The government can't solve every issue, but it can help people, and that's what we're here to do. You know, I want to help people.
Thank you. Alex Allenson?
I think this obviously is a very complicated issue, because actually if you put lots of money into housing, you can artificially inflate the prices. We've seen that in the UK, but also we're going through a housing bubble here, which has exacerbated what was lying underneath. what is key to this is actually having a proper housing strategy, which has been started by the Cabinet Office to look at it in the round. But what we need to do also is tackle intergenerational fairness, make sure people have decently secure, well-paid jobs so they can afford to get onto the housing market. And one of the ways of doing that is for government to underwrite deposits, not to inflate the price, but to actually give them the backing they need to make the decision they want. The first-time buyers scheme is being reviewed. A lot of other things need to be reviewed. And the fact that we've now got a development corporation means that we can use private investment and private initiative to have things like rent-to-buy schemes, which have never been tried on the island, but have been very successful across and in other jurisdictions.
Yeah. Thank you. Simon Mann?
Yes, well, again, one has to look back to the 70s as to how the government actually dealt with precisely this issue. In those days, you had building by private enterprise, and what it comes down to is what's the true cost of a house? Because the kind of prices that young people are being presented is the finished article after various levels of profit have been applied. And so to drill it down to the core issue is government needs to acquire the land to start off with. There's no good the developer getting it because the developer will have paid a premium and he's going to want a return on it. Government then either needs to build the house or make the land available by one of these building by private enterprise schemes. But really the best thing that can ever be delivered to a young person is a building at just basic cost, that they can possibly have their hand in how they would like it designed, the size of it and so on. Now obviously they're going to be restricted by what they can afford, but you make an affordable house by starting with the land, and you get your quantity surveyor to actually work out what all the materials come to. And what that total is actually what the price of the house should be. Where we're going wrong on this island is the profit and greed is still coming in, even at the lowest end of the market. Profit and greed are there, and government has been following that. And so what we need to do is get down to the basics. If you set out with this piece of land here now to build a house, and you used local timber, local building materials and so on as much as you could, at cost, you would certainly produce a very reasonable house. I have recently heard that I believe there's a firm now that's looking at eco houses, and I think there's some other firms looking at relatively inexpensive prefabricated houses, which brings the bricks and mortar element down even more. And those are the elements we've got to concentrate on. I started this meeting this evening with the recommendation that we have a housing department, a housing minister and a housing trust. The housing trust I would expect to have industry people, experienced builders, quantity surveyors and so on its board to deliver those houses, to deliver the schemes. And all that government's got to do actually is to find the finance to start off with to get the basic land at good price, okay, and to get the price down.
I would like to...
Thank you. I just want to get Laurie Hooper's view in, and I'll come back to you, Luke. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. So talk of a government housing trust. Within the last 6 months, I helped set up something called the Manx Development Corporation, which Alex has already mentioned. This is essentially a government developer that will build affordable housing on government-owned brownfield sites. So Simon's suggestion of we should definitely do something, been there, done that, Simon, it's up and running.
We haven't got a housing minister, we haven't got a housing department, and it's going nowhere so far.
Okay, fair enough.
And you've had several years to do something about it. And again, young people on this island have suffered in the meantime and are still suffering. They can't get houses and they're having to leave the island. So what's actually been achieved?
I'm assuming you're going to let me finish.
It's not a time to pat yourself on the back, sorry.
Simon, thank you.
The point I'm making is this is already in train. So Alex mentioned that we now have a working group setting up an all-island housing strategy. Again, that was off the back of a motion that I brought to Tynwald to start this process. So it is an issue. Housing has been an issue on the island for a long time. This is not new. The one thing that concerns me about the debate we're having around this table, actually, is that we're all talking about first-time buyers. There isn't anybody talking about last-time buyers, about a couple that separate and still needs to buy a house. There isn't any support under the government system for those sort of schemes, and there needs to be. Because affordable housing isn't just about affordable housing for young people or affordable housing for people that have got 2 jobs and can afford to pay a hefty mortgage. Affordable housing means affordable housing for everybody. And that means everybody at all stages of life and all types of housing need as well. There are some people who don't want to buy a house.
But you would agree that it's young people who are disproportionately affected by this issue?
I have been making that argument for 5 years. We have seen wage stagnation on the Isle of Man for the best part of a decade. We have been struggling, actually. My generation and the generations after me are the ones that are essentially paying for a lot of the mistakes made by previous generations, by governments in the 70s and the 80s with all their wonderful ideas. And so it's us now that's bearing the cost of some of those mistakes. And so it is quite rich, actually, to hear people harking back to the good old days, which actually enabled causing a lot of the problems that we're seeing today. And I completely agree with the comments that have been made. Government needs to act faster. It needs to do more. The first-time buyer schemes are totally inadequate. Yeah. And I've been making that case again for years.
So how long until the first house is built?
I would like to think in the next 12 months. That's my hope.
Very good.
I'd like to think that the government will be able to support things like a mortgage guarantee scheme that they have in the UK. They've relaunched that in the UK because it was so successful. It helps lower.
The Development Corporation seems to have a hell of a lot on its plate.
It does. It's got a massive challenge ahead of it to start solving some of these issues, but it's only one part of the puzzle. The commissioners are another part of the puzzle in terms of getting more public sector housing.
Would it be fair to say that there's probably the focus for the corporation is maybe on Douglas sites in terms of commercial sites, and the likes of the more regional towns, if I can call it that, will get left behind?
No, so I would very much like that not to happen, quite frankly. So the focus inevitably will be on Douglas, where most of the housing need is. But I think there are lots of very viable brownfield sites in Ramsey and other parts of the island that could easily be developed as part of an affordable housing plan. And in fact, the commissioners for a long time have had plans to build affordable housing on some of those sites in Ramsey themselves.
So why hasn't it happened?
So really what government needs to do is enable and support them in actually delivering some of these plans.
Okay, just want to get Luke's view, thanks.
Follow on from Mr. Mann's comment. Being part of the Housing Committee for 5 years with Ramsey Town Commissioners, we've actually found we actually own our own land to build on. But what we found with the massive increase with the construction industry, with all the materials, the new regulations that government's now enforcing with the green schemes, with insulation and air source heat pumps and things, it's actually not viable for us to even build our own homes.
So the government's failed, basically.
So young people can't afford to buy them, and the government can't afford to build them. So we're absolutely...
It's a shambles.
I agree with Mr. Mann.
It's actually more straightforward.
It's quite spectacular.
It's not the government can't afford to build them. It's government over the last 5 or 10 years has actively chosen not to build them.
Yeah, but I hope
that's
now,
the problem.
COVID has absolutely hammered the point.
Yeah.
That you can't just do nothing.
Yeah,
we have to support these people. And I want to make a quick point. Sorry. I think it's not unreasonable. We have a land tax, don't we? So you buy a house, you pay your fee to a land registry. If that's a second house or a third house or a fourth house, you start paying tax, and you start paying some pretty big tax because that's a commercial activity.
Again, we did change the law 2 years ago to make that happen, and in the last 2 years it's raised an extra £1.2 million in revenue.
You increased the thresholds on the...
No, we separated it out. So if you buy a property as an owner-occupier, you now pay less than if you're buying it as an investor.
Would anybody be in favour of putting restrictions on off-island investors who are buying island properties?
So again, that's a really good question. So data at the moment seems to suggest that more than half of properties being sold are being bought by owner-occupiers, so people moving into the property rather than buying them to rent them out. So there's
the problem's being over-egged, do you think?
Possibly. I think the real answer is we don't know. So if it turns out that actually a lot of this price bubble is being driven by off-island speculation, I think there has to be something.
But is there a point of principle, perhaps?
Yep.
Leonard Singer?
One of the problems I've come across talking on the doorstep is that people are in a house and the house is quite large and they want to sell this house. And they'll get a really good price for it now, but when they try to move somewhere else, to somewhere smaller, that has gone up so much that they're saying, I can't really afford to move.
Which is the whole thing about intergenerational fairness. Is not just first-time buyers wanting to upsize, it's people wanting to downsize as well, because I've had the same issue. And it's trying to make that as easy as possible for people to make that transition. But also, at the end of the day, we are dealing with a business where it is supply and demand. And I don't think anyone can honestly say that we don't need to build more houses. The question is where we build them and the quality of the houses that we build and the affordability.
If you do build affordable housing at a high quality, I hope, then that should have to remain affordable. It can't be sold to anyone else at all. That is, we have commissioners' housing and then you have affordable housing. It's almost like another bracket in between private ownership. It's a difficult bridge to build, but something we have to do through shared ownership, perhaps.
It's about talking about that.
Driving it through, is there?
Well,
and there hasn't been for
we
the
need some
last
drivers,
few
Simon.
years.
For the last
Well,
year.
exactly.
For the last
I'll
year,
drive
there
it
has
through
been.
if necessary.
So for the last year,
Things
there
have
has
got
been
to
people
change in
driving
this
it
next
through.
government. It's no good sitting on the fence and doing nothing. People are waiting for these houses. How long are they expected to wait?
Is the building of more social housing?
It's got to be
solution?
done.
Yes,
I think it is, because the other aspect of all this is affordable rents. That if young people are in rented accommodation with the rents that are asked at the moment, they find it very hard to save for a deposit. So one of the initiatives is to have mid-rent. So it's not either or, either commissioners' housing or private. You have a midway point whereby people can actually live well in a nice accommodation, but also have enough to save to actually move on when they've got a deposit.
That's the situation. That's perfect.
It's also worth highlighting that actually it's not just changing the building more public sector housing that's the solution, but you need to change some of the eligibility and access criteria as well. So over the last 5 years, I can't even begin to count the number of people that have approached me for help and support, because the arbitrary rules government applies to who can and can't qualify for public sector housing has left people in genuine housing need just out in the cold. And that is completely unacceptable. It needs to change. And I think there's a lot that can be done quite quickly by the next government to make some of those changes that are needed.
The building of public sector housing would mask a problem.
Yeah.
Within RTC, we've actually seen a decline in requirement of housing. However, now house prices are going up more so than people can afford. Rents, as already said, going up more than people can afford. That demand is going to go up. And our waiting lists going to climb back again, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, building social housing, as much as we do require some, it will only just mask a problem, and it's not curing the overall.
One very quick point.
Sure.
An area that often gets overlooked, I think, in this. Affordable housing is great, and ideas like Mr. Mann, cheap housing, build cheap housing. There are a whole group of people who over the last 2 or 3 years have made massive sacrifices to put themselves onto that housing ladder. And if you suddenly bring a load of cheap housing into the market, you're doing a massive disservice to those people who've made that sacrifice and put themselves in that position, who are going to end up in negative equity. So you can still support people to buy houses, but you need to be very careful that by doing that, you don't crash the housing market and leave a load of people in negative equity as well.
Yeah.
Okay, one quick word, Leonard Singer.
Luke mentioned joint equity, and I think this is a very good way of getting people onto the housing ladder. And I think my idea of housing associations, that could be actually incorporated into joint equity, where they buy half the house, they rent half the house, and over a period of time, they can buy the rest of the house.
So the two government first-time buyer schemes are shared equity schemes already.
Well,
and they're not as effective as they could be.
Well,
which is why
it needs to be effective.
Which is why you need to look at things like mortgage guarantee schemes as a change, because really the issue people are having is getting that deposit together in the first place,
If the government's
not necessarily affordability.
got that principle, then that's very good.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. That wraps up our questions for this evening. I was thinking we've got the wrap-ups as well, so yeah. Okay. You're in luck. You've got bonus time. Yeah. Okay, next question. The Isle of Man's only one of a small handful of countries in the world with de-restricted roads, and the current road safety strategy states that the nature of our roads is part of the culture of the Isle of Man. At the same time, however, according to recent Isle of Man government figures, people are twice as likely to be killed or seriously injured on the Isle of Man's roads as they are on England's. The mountain road, obviously very important in your constituency, has had to be closed on numerous occasions this year because of accidents. Where do you sit on this issue? Do you support the retention of de-restricted roads, the ability to go at high speed, or would you be in favour of the application of a maximum speed limit on all of the island's roads? Robert Cowell.
Bizarrely, I nearly had a head-on crash on the way here tonight, and he was going very fast. I like the Isle of Man for freedom. The Isle of Man is not a place where you get socially controlled to a point where you're restrained. I think the speed limit is one of those things where, is it going to save lives? If we put a speed limit in, is the individual who wants to go fast going to abide by that speed limit.
There was a speed limit put in last year at 40 miles an hour.
40.
For the sole purpose of
yeah.
reducing the pressure on the hospital.
That was painful.
So
it took you an hour to get
the implication is that to reduce
directly
accidents,
correlated.
you need to reduce
yeah,
the speed.
you could say that. You could say that. Do I support an all-island speed limit in the question? No, I don't think I do.
So bearing in mind the statistics.
Yeah, but in that instance, at 40 miles an hour, if you put a blanket speed limit in at 40 miles an hour, nice. If you put a blanket speed limit in at 40 miles an hour,
well, the maximum speed limit wouldn't necessarily be 40, but it wouldn't be de-restricted.
Yeah, I think, well, the Isle of Man is a tourism, has a link to tourism, and I think part of that attraction is the free spirit nature of the
island. It's that uniqueness that the island can offer.
And I don't appreciate
go as fast as you like.
Motorbikes coming off the boat and killing themselves. I don't appreciate that at all. But
okay, Luke Parker, your view.
I mean, I'll come back to what you just mentioned there about the stats of the 40 mile an hour and during the COVID time, which is what was implemented. But I'll also challenge that question saying it was the quietest on the road because we all had to stay at home. It wasn't down to speed, I'll say, because nobody was allowed to drive unless you were necessary to drive. So I would also challenge that question. As for
well, the stats are the stats. They're not my stats.
Oh no, I appreciate that. But also, I would challenge those stats as into was it speed or because no cars. And
well, the stats are from pre-COVID, so just before the COVID pandemic.
So when it was
so the deaths and serious injuries on Manx roads are twice as much as on England's roads.
Oh,
so there's a reason for that.
I'm coming back to when they restricted
What do you think the reason is for that then? It's because we have lots of cars on the roads?
I wouldn't say we've got... I mean, we have got plenty of cars on our roads. If anything more so now...
So we just need to reduce the number of cars on the roads?
It'll be nice too. And this is where it comes to the environmental factor of things, other means and ways to commute as well. But as for implementing a speed restriction, I will be against. I know you mentioned the mountain road, but you only have to take into consideration things like Marine Drive. How many cars have came off Marine Drive recently? And yet it does have a speed limit. So you can challenge it in many means and ways. But
don't often see a policeman on Marine Drive, to be fair. But
say again, sorry?
You don't often see a policeman on Marine Drive, to be fair.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
use spotted occasionally.
But no, I wouldn't be in favour for it. I love the freedom that it offers. I also think the tourism that it attracts as well by having unrestricted roads.
It's not actively promoted by Visit Isle of Man as an attraction to go as fast as you like. So.
I don't know.
No, it's not.
Yeah. So I'm taking your word, but no, I think for those who know about it, I think it should be used, and it's another addition to the island for its freedom that it offers.
Okay, thank you. Alex Allenton?
Yeah, I was part of the Department of Home Affairs when we brought forward the road safety strategy that you referred to. I'm personally not in favour of all island speed limits. What the strategy looked at was a safer systems approach. And speed is one aspect of car crashes and motorbike crashes, but there are other aspects such as the road surface, such as the vehicles themselves. Yeah. And so you've got to deal with this holistically. Just bringing in blanket speed limits that by themselves won't necessarily reduce
Aren't the vehicles safer than ever?
No, they're not. Although new vehicles may be safer than ever, one of the aspects we have on the Isle of Man is not a regular MOT. So one of the things that is happening now is checking vehicles. We tend to do it at Christmas time, but checking vehicles for their brakes and lights. We have a lot of older vehicles on the island still driving around that probably aren't as safe as they should be. But what we also need to deal with in terms of road safety are the aspects that we can actually make a big influence. So in terms of active travel that's been talked about, bringing in 20 mile an hour speed limits through residential areas, making people more confident about getting on a bike or walking on, to work is absolutely essential to reduce the overall traffic. But in terms of all island speed limits, I'm not for them. We need the evidence base to bring them in those roads which are actually, for whatever reason, causing the accidents.
Okay, thank you. Leonard Singer?
The number of roads that are de-restricting the Isle of Man has gradually been reduced and reduced and reduced. And there were initial complaints, but people have accepted that now. But you were talking before about accidents, and there's no doubt statistics are that in a de-restricted road there are more accidents, and the problem with that is because the people who have the accidents are usually young people. who are not experienced, and they are the high up in the statistics. And it all depends, when you're saying having a speed limit, it depends what speed limit you mean. If it's going to be 70, then I think I would support that, maybe even 65. But I do think we need to actually look after the road user. There's some irresponsibility. I mean, the number of times I've gone over the mountain over the years and you've had to brake because somebody's speeding and going past you and cutting in or coming towards you. I think we've got to protect people, and I think we do need maybe 60, 70 speed limit.
Yeah. Can I just say, I think you need to be very careful not to demonise young drivers, because a lot of them are very responsible. But I think you do mention one thing, which is the enforcement of speed limits. We don't have speed cameras on the Isle of Man. We do have a very good road traffic unit that have been probably underfunded over the last couple of years and are actually expanding now. And it's enforcement of speed limits, which is probably more important than just having them in the first place.
Is it irresponsible?
Can I say, I'm not demonising young drivers. It's a fact that young people have more accidents than older people.
Depends what you define as young people. I remember reading statistics a few years ago that actually showed people in their 40s were just as likely to have an accident.
In the 20s, yeah.
Laurie Hooper, your view?
So it's quite a good question, really. I was emailed this question the other day by a constituent of mine who has very similar concerns, which was quite interesting. So for me, I think it's a kind of a tricky conversation to have, because
it's a vote loser, is it?
I think whichever way you go, people aren't going to be happy with you, quite frankly. So for me, I think you have to look at what the issues are and what people are concerned about. So when I've been out talking to people, the issue that's come up most often, I haven't heard anyone talk about the mountain road in terms of a speed limit. I have had lots of people talk to me about speed limits in the towns. Yeah. Lots of people concerned about speeding down Derby Road or up Bowring Road, or speeding around some of the housing estates that we have, especially the housing areas that are cut-throughs between some of our main roads. So the start point would be, I think, let's look at controlling speed in the towns, look at controlling speed in our local areas as a start point. When it comes to a national speed limit, I think the questions for me are around effectiveness and enforceability. We could put a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit on the mountain, but if it's not effective, what's the point? You're essentially just wasting police resources. Okay. So I think I would support investigating actually what might work. And if it is okay to put a high enough speed limit on that's going to be effective, that we can enforce, and is going to actually make people safer, I don't see how you could really object to that. But my main focus, I think, on speed would be on the local areas, the housing areas, especially in Ramsey, where we are getting lots of complaints about people speeding, where I think action can be taken quite quickly.
Thank you. Simon Mann.
Yes, well, of course, from my former life as a policeman for 22 years, when you've been to the door of somebody's house to give the family the result of a fatality, there's no doubt in your mind that something's wrong with the law. The majority of accidents on this island are caused by speed, and pretty nearly speed alone, although we can now add an additional factor about the appalling state of the roads. Governments shy away sometimes from responsible, tough decisions that are unpopular with the public, and this is just one of them. I'm all in favour of an all-island speed limit. Yes, you could relax it for the TT fortnight and for the Manx Grand Prix fortnight by putting in place, and only relax it on the TT course, I might add, by putting in place round the course additional safety features to compensate for that. But the rest of the year, you have only to step out onto any of the roads on this island. It is possessed with lunatics. I don't know who's taught them to drive. I don't know how they have it in their heads that they should think they can drive on the roads the way they do. But actually, it places all of us at risk, and a responsible government would have done something about this a long time ago. It's staring at them in the face, and actually those deaths now, as they're occurring, are down to the fact that a decent speed limit and speed enforcement has been long, long overdue.
Thank you. Final word to Jonathan Kinraid.
I can do this very quickly for you. One sentence from my manifesto. I would not support an all-island speed limit. I think we could achieve more immediate results by enforcing the limits we already have, and by improving road markings and signage, also through better driver education and training.
All right, thank you. I know the Roads Policing Unit will be a keen viewers of this particular edition. Thank you, candidates. That wraps up our questions for this evening. All that remains now is for each candidate to have their final word on why they should get your vote. And first up, we have Leonard Singer.
Well, we've discussed some items tonight, and there's many items that we haven't discussed, and please look at my manifesto and you'll see what I've got to say. But it all comes down to one thing: it's having a successful economy. If I may briefly come back to the proposal for the marina, let me say this, as far as I'm concerned. I don't care about feasibility studies. I don't care about the proposal complying or not complying with conditions. I don't care about any discussions going on or not going on with government, or how many MHKs have said to support it. I'm totally against it. And for me, it is saying no, no, no. Now, my enthusiasm for this job is undiminished. Working for Ramsey, working with Ramsey, speaking up for the town. Your problems are my problems, and I will work on your behalf to get a result, to get justice, to expose unfairness, and if I'm elected, to show you that the trust you put in me was justified.
Thank you. Luke Parker.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm very passionate about this island. I love this island, being born and bred here, and also very passionate for Ramsey, hence why I have my business and my family live in Ramsey as well. And I'd love to do as much as I can, as I've already mentioned in my opening statement, how much I love to get involved within the town, from events to even working within local politics. And with my experience over the past 5 years, especially working on local politics, I would hope that you've seen what we've accomplished, as well as I can also hit the ground running as going forward as MHK. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Simon Mann.
Yes, well, on election night, I am going to deliver those two messages: that Ramsey says no to this crazy marina project, and that it says very much yes to getting this, we haven't talked about much tonight, getting a new GP surgery and a new medical centre for the town. All I can say is that if you elect me, it's not going to be an easy ride in that House of Keys. The last 5 years have been particularly poor. There hasn't been sufficient scrutiny. And all I would say is, going forward, the words are going to be, this island can and will do better. And I intend to make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Simon. Jonathan Kinraid.
Yeah, thank you. Nothing would make me more proud than to represent the people of Ramsey and to be given the chance to be a catalyst for real growth that is sympathetic to everything that the residents and businesses of the town already love. If we tackle the obvious and simple issues first and do those things properly, and then build to more radical and adventurous ideas, always with clear communication and input from the residents and businesses, we've got a real solid basis to grow without over-promising and being under-delivering on things. I would promise to be open, available and trustworthy, and would work with passion and determination. I have no fear of challenging the status quo and pushing for real change. I am trying hard to visit everybody over the next few weeks, but please get in touch for a chat if I haven't made it to you yet and you would like to arrange an appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Laurie Hooper.
Thanks very much, Richard. You've heard from all the candidates over the course of this debate programme, and I hope I've managed to convince you that I'm the right choice for Ramsey. I'm not making grandiose promises that I won't be able to keep, but I will work hard and I will work for you. I think I've demonstrated over the last 5 years that I have the drive, the energy, passion, commitment and enthusiasm to represent you well, and the courage to stand up for Ramsey and make your voices heard. Thank you again for talking with me on the doorstep. Please have a read of my manifesto, which has been built around some of these conversations. When it comes down to it, though, the power to choose how you want your government to act and the direction it will take rests with you. Government is not just one issue. The next 5 years will be challenging, and we need people that will step up to that challenge. So I would implore you, no matter who you vote for on the 23rd of September, please use your vote. No, in fact, scratch that. Vote Hooper for Ramsey, and let's get back to work.
Thank you, Laurie. Robert Cowell.
Thank you, Richard. It would be an honour to represent Ramsey in the House of Keys. I have a very simple mandate in my head. I want to boost the economy. I want to retain our youth. I want to bring rate reform. And if we can help in the affordable housing situation, that would be fantastic. I want to help drive the Isle of Man forward. And I urge you all to vote. Vote for whoever you like. Vote for the people who you think are going to best represent your town.
I look forward to the election night. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And finally, Alex Allinson.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the organisers of this event and the audience and also the other candidates for taking part, because this is democracy in action. This is what it should be like, and we need that engagement from you. We need you to get out to vote. In some ways, it doesn't matter who you vote for, but vote so you can have your voice heard. I have been absolutely thrilled to represent the people of Ramsey over the last 5 years. I've set out to do various things for the town and for our great nation. I've accomplished some of them, but there is so much work to be done. The next 5 years will be a challenge, but also there'll be opportunities. And I want to be part, not just of Tynwald, but of government to actually drive those changes forward. So on the 23rd of September, please vote, please watch this programme, please look at some of the other hustings, make your mind up, but get out there and tick the box. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you again to all the candidates and to the audience members for attending this evening. The candidates are Alex Allinson, Robert Cowell, Laurie Hooper, Jonathan Kinraid, Simon Mann, Luke Parker, and Leonard Singer. And Erica Spencer is also standing, but unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight. So now it's over to you. Where will your vote be going on September the 23rd? Thank you for watching. Goodbye.